We're jumping right into the video today. Today's style is a little different. We're going to get into a voiceover. I'm going to try my very best to describe everything I'm doing so it's a lot more understandable for you to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And we're going to be doing a refill with a cute, pretty simple design. What I started off with is removing the old gel. This client is a nurse and she has about 3 to 4 weeks of retention. I'm first starting with, I like to start with dragging the bit towards me, ideally from the left, then to the center, then following the right. Then I like going around the cuticle. I'm also going to debulk if I see any lifting with this bit. I like to do this before pushing back the cuticle just because there is acrylic and I'm not working on the natural nail plate yet. So right now I'm just pulling towards me. This one I actually start at the cuticle and then eventually I pull towards me. Normally I do pull towards me, left, middle, center. I believe I start doing it on the other finger and then going around the cuticle. I am going to zoom out for the other hand and that way you can see my wrist movement. I feel like that was something I struggled a lot with in the beginning when I first started doing nails. And here you can notice I have an overhand grip. That's going to be easier for me to maneuver that client's nail to fold down and be able to get into the little crevice of the right side. So here I'm pulling towards me, towards me, towards me, constantly moving the bit across, and that's going to prevent you from doing any heat spikes. And then I'm debulking the cuticle area. And when you see me put my thumb on top of the product, I like to take pauses. You will probably see that throughout the video where just to reinsure, and people love to tell me like, oh, it didn't hurt or I didn't get a heat spike. And it's like, yeah, I naturally have always done this. And I feel like that's why a lot of girls don't get heat spikes. When I notice I like pass an area 1, 2, 3, 4 times too many, I'll just pause and put my finger on it. And you can actually feel the heat sometimes. And that actually even happens with filing. Fun fact, a lot of people think you can't get heat spikes or only the damage comes from the e-file. You can definitely still damage someone with the hand file. So definitely make sure after 3, 4 times, as long as you're in the same area, you can possibly get a heat spike. So if you're constantly in motion, that's why I like going from the left, center to the right. And as long as you're constantly in motion, then there's less of an opportunity for that to happen. So we just removed all the design. We're working on the superficial. So now we're actually going to start treating the skin and the cuticle. So what I'm doing here is just pushing up, and you can actually start seeing the discoloration of some product. And that discoloration signals that there is some, minor lifting, which we're going to be able to remove with the sanding band. So the motion I am doing here we have a sticky cuticle. So you just want to be very gentle and you want to push into the skin and do a slight rolling motion. I don't know if you can pick that up between my index and my thumb. I am pushing back and putting a little bit of pressure and tucking that wooden stick up and out. And that's going to help push and move the cuticle up and out of your way so it's ready for the flame bit. So now we're starting to get into the Express Russian manicure. And that basically tells you I'm not going to spend too much time on the sidewalls. I'm just going to focus more on the round cuticle area, right? So here I am using a blue band flame bit. I normally do prefer the red band, and I always use the red band. Unfortunately, I did not have one sanitized. This was an unexpected appointment. Therefore, I was not prepared. So yeah. So point is, I'm mostly treating the upper part of the cuticle, right? And here you can see I'm turning my client's wrist so I can go ahead and get up in the corners. And I'm just working from one cuticle side to the other side. And here it's a more zoomed out version of that exactly. This is a very quick step unless they are very sensitive. This person is used to this. Her skin is accustomed to this. Therefore, she's not too sensitive when it comes to this. So it's a very quick process. It takes less than a minute and 30 seconds. Don't overthink it. I feel like as a beginner, we always overthink so much. So So off we go, jumping into the sanding band. So when I was debulking with the turbo bit, the first step I did, working on the superficial, I did get as close as I possibly felt comfortable with. So and then the sanding band, because that part is already lifted, as you see, when you go over with that sanding band, it basically is going to exfoliate, and that texture is going to remove that part. So think about it as it's already disconnected, right? If I would have left that with the turbo bit and I would have not gone, and debulked that with the sanding band, if I would have had to go over and over and over and over to reduce that bulk, then to finally get where it's like basically the acrylic is very devy, very, no sé cómo explicarlo, very thin. And that's where the sanding band can just take over and just literally, it's going to exfoliate it off. It's just going to like remove her, like if she never existed. It's something that does take a little bit of practice to get comfortable with. And personally, I'm not the type to, if I see like, oh, okay, I'm exfoliating with the sanding band and it seems to continue to go lower, then I know I have to switch bits and go back in with my debulking bit and debulk even more, because that means there's going to be an air pocket in the inside, and that's not the case here. I will demonstrate that the day it comes up, obviously, but she didn't have any of that issue, which is great. But if you do see that you have to go back to debulking, do not feel embarrassed. Do not feel shy. You have to move correctly, obviously, with the new information that presents itself. And, you would move forward like that. You would go back to debulking, remove the most you could. If it looks like, hey, this nail has a lot of internal lifting, you would just literally remove the entire nail. And if that means, index fingers, they get wear and tear a lot more than, let's say, every other finger, because we're putting on our shoes, our pants, and index finger gets a lot of wear and tear. So don't be shy when that happens. Just move accordingly and use your integrity to, hey, we have to remove this. It is what it is. Let's remove her. And then we can just do a full new nail on that one. So moving back to this, sorry, that was a little off track, but so here we are, overhand grip, and we are bending that finger down to get into that sidewall around the cuticle and exfoliating. This is a light feather touch. You do not need to add pressure. The less wear and tear on our hands, the better. And that's the point of the e-file. You don't want to go around an area more than, say, about like 3 to 4 times. Yeah, when you pass it 1, 2, give it a sec, or go to the other side wall and then come back to it. Because if you start staying there in that one area, you can damage the nail plate and as well cause a heat spike. So here, using that overhand grip, folding at the knuckles so you can get into that sidewall and go around the cuticle, and then twisting to the other side to get into the other sidewall. Fun fact, the healthiest way and most natural way for our hand position to be is not this underhand grip. It would be that overhand grip. Obviously, I do a lot of long nails, so I have accustomed myself to underhand grip, but it does strain your hand after a couple years or after a long set. So, if the nail is pretty short, try your best to bring some consciousness to that and stay in the overhand grip. It also prevents the client from trying to look over and look at what you're doing. So, and it gives you a little more control. Okay, so this is now me working on the other hand. I do like to zoom out for the other hand so you guys can notice more of my hand placement, my wrist movement. Let me know if that's beneficial to you guys and if that helps. So I know to continue adding this. I did crop this some and move some parts out just because it's very repetitive. But do notice that I am using my pinky to balance, and that helps with controlling the e-file. I could do a video on, other little tips and tricks, but that's the one I can mostly think about right now. I do, as you see, have very extremely long nails, so I'll even balance off of my own hand at times, depending what feels most comfortable. And I am jumping between overhand grip and underhand grip. Don't forget to use your clients, again, their knuckles and their wrists to your advantage. There's a lot of wear and tear when doing nails. So just, again, bringing consciousness to that so you basically don't strain yourself or hurt yourself sooner than later. And I also like to reinsure I did remove all the polish. Sometimes it can, you know, while you're debulking, you can possibly leave some polish on the edges or the sidewalls. So with this is where you reinsure that you removed everything, just to make sure when you lay that acrylic, it's all one consistent color. If you saw my last video, if not, go check it out. It's about the Russian manicure. I do like using the dome bit. Here I am using a round bit. Again, I did not have time to sanitize. So that's why I'm using this ball bit. It still has that same round dome shape to it. So it is one and the same. I personally prefer the other one. That's just my preference. I do know a lot of people that enjoy this. And this is a very quick, like, reinsuring that everything is exfoliated up and out. So you will catch me with my hand gesture turning my wrist and the client's wrist a lot more, just to reinsure as it's rotating in forward, if I'm correct. I can't remember. But basically, it's exfoliating it, again, up and out. That way it's pushing that cuticle away from you and pushing it up. So when you go in to cut, it's going to be a lot more seamless. If you would be working the other way, you would technically be hurting the client because it's not going to be as smooth. So you would feel it because you would have some friction. When you're working with the drill, you're going to feel some resistance, and that gives you a lot more control because it's moving against each other. So this personally is my favorite part. I've always used the scissors. I've never got into the nippers. I feel like they're so bulky, I cannot see where I'm going. And this gives you a perfectly clear image of where you're headed. So while doing the cutting, I do add a slight pressure. So you would push into the skin and that would kind of pop out a little of what exactly you're going to be cutting. I know it's very scary. This is like where you can obviously see after the Russian Express, you could see if the client's sensitive or not. She's used to this process, so her skin is not irritated or red. And it's very clear to see what area is live skin separated from the dead skin. That makes this process a lot easier. And normally, typically, people with dry skin, it's easier to differentiate. And you can always put a little bit of powder, and that's also going to help. So if they are very like sweaty or like sweaty fingers or just very moisturized or they wore lotion that day, putting a little bit of powder is going to help you differentiate the difference between the skin and the cuticle that you'll be removing. I'm going to go in with some swipe. This I like to do. I like to use a soft bristle brush. I'm going up and down and then all around if it has a lot of dust on the sidewalls, making sure the sidewalls are good. And the last motion I will be doing is going down. So if I go up, 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 down, we're going to go down. It's going to always be the last motion to reinsure we're pulling everything out of the cuticles and they are completely cleansed from any dust or debris. And you also want to reinsure this product is completely dry before you go in with your dehydrator, which I like to use Young Nails Protein Bond. I'm also going in with Cover Pink by Young Nails, and you want to always add new monomer into your dabbing dish. Reinsure that that is clean and it is not contaminated with old product. If you have some old product in there and it is contaminated, please replace it because that will make your brush gunky and then you're going to have to start cleaning in between the client, and that's just, that's too much. So just reinsure that the dabbing dish is not contaminated with old product in there so you can prevent your brush from getting messed up. And this part is very easy. You're just going over the new growth and reinsuring that that's going to seal everything. This is what helps me get 4 weeks retention with all my clients. If they are a little more on the aggressive, hardcore side, I will go over with going over twice. But normally I do once and it's perfectly fine. This also, you don't want to put too much. Like you don't want to drop a whole load because if you do, you will make a slick layer and the product cannot adhere correctly. So there definitely is like a happy medium but it's not hard. Like the ratio is not like, let's say when you're getting the polymer to the monomer. No, it's a very quick and easy medium that you're gonna receive. So if you think one time is more than enough, just stick to that and you should be fine. Okay, so getting into the acrylic application, I do always start off by pushing with the pusher. That's why you see it in the background. I did push the cuticle back and let the skin expose more nail plate. And now I go in with a small bead to go ahead and backfill. This, I'm going to probably make a video if you guys want about the ratio between the polymer and the monomer. The only big thing with this, I would say, is definitely for the index finger. It normally grows down. That's for a lot of people. So you are going to have to get, instead of a small bead, a bigger size bead, like a medium size bead. And here I'm customizing depending where she needs a little more structure, or if I see too much of the natural nail plate, I would add extra acrylic, especially when you're doing almond, because that's not the natural shape. It makes it a little more delicate on the sides. Adding acrylic there will help support and reinforce the strength of the nail. It's going to make it just a lot more durable. Using your tip, I like to leave about 1 centimeter between the acrylic and the skin, and then pushing the acrylic into the little space. So here you're going to see I'm going to press and bring it up as close as I possibly can to fill all that nail plate, and then swipe the product down to blend it into the product we already originally have. Another important part of this is pointing the finger down. You do not want gravity to work against you. You want it to work with you. Therefore, pointing the finger down, I highly recommend one of the hand rests for the client. That makes your job a lot easier. And that also reassures that you're not going to flood the cuticle with the product falling and oozing into the cuticle, which is also why, like I said, leaving that little space, because it's going to run a little bit. So you give it a second to settle, and then you push it up into there. And this is me doing the little trick I was telling you about, the index, and bringing all that bulk down. So you're swiping very light-handed to bring the bulk down to, again, reinforce that nail, because it normally does like to grow down for a lot of people. If you have made it this far, I do want to say thank you for just hearing me out and working with my explanation of just yapping and giving you all the cues I can think about as we go. I highly appreciate it. And if you guys can like and subscribe, that would help support me, and I would appreciate you, so I can continue making more content like this. And feel free to write down anything else that you guys want me to talk about or make a video about, and I'll do my best to explain it to the best of my capabilities. So this second shot is going to be sped up. One thing I did notice that I forgot to mention was sometimes I do like to run my brush with whatever's left on the brush on top of the dry acrylic. Right there, I just did it, and that's going to help prevent, if by any reason the bead you picked up was a little off on the ratio and it's a little too dry on the bottom of the bead, that's not going to allow the discoloration to happen between the wet acrylic and the dry acrylic. Because since you moisturize it with monomer on the bottom, it's going to help basically reassure that everything is, in a sense, hydrated, I guess, or just has the correct ratio to reassure it cures and comes to the correct color that it was originally meant to be. So I love young nails, by the way. Their colors do not wear and tear. Some colors sometimes tend to get old looking or just not the same exact color that you left with. So I highly recommend this brand. I think they're incredible. I use a lot of their polymers, so definitely something to look into investing. We're also definitely wiping our brush. As you see, I wipe my brush a lot. And you also want to look at the nail from the side profile, which is what I was just doing. That's very important, just to reassure you have the correct structure that you need according to the length of the nail. So now we're going into debulking the nail. This is basically to clean up any bumps and lumps. I was taught to manually file and then use the e-file to dust that up. That is incorrect. You're going to wear and tear your hands. Do not do that. Use the e-file to debulk, get the thinness that you want, look for the apex that you're looking for. This is mostly to get a nice smooth transition from the cuticle into the apex, and that's what I mostly use this comb bit. It has that rounded dome feel to it again, so it again pushes that cuticle and the acrylic and it separates it, and it's very nice to get very deep and tight into the cuticle without hurting your client. I used to use a one that was like more of a cone, but it had sharp edges and that had more of a possibility to hurt someone. So this one's very user friendly, especially if you just started. So you're just basically gonna go ahead and give it a more or less guesstimation. So when you go in with your hand file, we're gonna build little houses. That's what I like calling it. Go straight across, back and forth, going straight across. I'll work on the sidewalls. So here I'm working on the right sidewall, and you're going to be able to tell where on the nail you have touched and what you have not. Ideally, you want it to eventually all connect. So you would start the top, the left, the right, and you're going to have like these two lines going down. And then you would eventually go around and smoothing that out in a circular motion, giving it that round shape that we all like in nails. So right here, I'm actually pointing out that you can see there's a smidge that has not been touched. You need to get rid of that divot in there. And if you leave that there, the polish is not going to look good, especially since a lot of people now do French. You want the polish to look good. You want it to be seamless. And to get that seamless look, this is so important. So the filing is going to make it or break it. And that last bit of filing, as you saw, I went up and down. And that up and down is really just going to tie everything in together. And again, going in that dome round shape. And that's what's really going to tie everything in together. So this next part is going to be pretty repetitive. She does previously, obviously this is a refill, so the shape is already there. You just have to a little like reinforce it. If in this case, the sidewalls obviously grow towards you, right? They grow down towards you. And you would just reensure that the sidewalls are still aligning to the sidewall of the skin. And the last motion, what I think is most important after building that little house of being top, left, right, and then swooshing it all together in that rotating, and then that last seal of up and down with the file, I think is magical. And that's the same motion I use when I buff. So now when I go in and I'm buffing, you're not going to see that I didn't record that, but when I am buffing, I do buff up and down, circular motions. And I feel that's what gives that like glass look when you put that top coat on. I think it's spectacular. I've seen a huge difference in when you take photos. That's actually one of the tips they say, is if you can see a perfect round circle of like the ring light in your acrylic as it's shining back at you, that's how you know you did a really good filing job. So definitely something to take to consideration. You can actually put a little bit of oil before you buff and look for that circular round ring light in the reflection, and that will tell you if you're done buffing or not. And here I am using an 80 grit file. I personally, again, wear and tear, my nemesis. So yes, I'm going to use an aggressive hand file so I can get through the thing quicker. And again, this is like one of my shorter clients, so I definitely work with a lot more long nail girlies, and again, wear and tear. So the 80 grit for me is like perfect. So now it's time for our clients to go get rid of our nemesis, aka powder. Polvo. She's everywhere. And that's definitely, especially if you use the oil, definitely have them wash their hands for a full minute with the brush and use something that, you know, like Dawn, that bites through grease and stuff. So that's really gonna, again, reassure your nails are perfectly clean. And then when my clients always come back, I always still go ahead and swipe them with swipe. And again, reinsuring that everything's clean, dust free. If needed, I will go ahead and tweak anything here like I did, cleaning out a little bit of the cuticle that there was a little bit left over. So here we're going in finally with our design. And there I am with my scissors again. And please do not hurt your client while doing this. If it does not want to leave, let it go. It's better for them to leave not injured and with their cuticles burning than to leave with like a little thing you could have exfoliated, even actually with the hand file. And you can just pass over the skin. I did go through that on my last video. So moving forward, we're going to do a French in red and two little 3D ladybugs that they came out so cute. I am going to just zoom kind of through this. It's going to be very quick since this is kind of a long video. Hopefully it's benefited you. But I love A-Press. Their polishes are the bomb, and the viscosity of this product is very see-through and sheer. So I absolutely love using this on top of covers, and it's very self-leveling, which makes it very easy to work with, especially when you're going to do a French on top. And that's nice because it does give you a sleek layer when doing your French. So it gives it a little more, like your brush will dance around a little bit. And always reassure you wash your brush right before you use it. I don't know why, but normally, even though I store it and it has a little cap, my brush is always going to get like a little stiff. So I always go ahead and like just run the brush and the bristles through some swipe to reassure it's like nice and flimsy and flows how I'm communicating to the brush. And it makes my life easier when doing that French. When painting, this is the moment of truth. This is where all your hard work comes together. Painting sounds so easy, but it is not as easy. Everyone's like, how hard can it be to paint some nails? It's hard. Okay, it's really hard actually. And to do a incredible, like beautiful job, it took a while. Okay, and my first year, I was so devoted to learning just acrylic that my painting the gel on top of acrylic was trash. I want to say like the biggest tip is going to be that application. Again, the filing plays such a huge part when it comes to this part right here. This is where all your hard work shows off. And another tip I like to do is I will get close to the cuticle, not on top of it, but close. And I will push with the brush up the product. So same concept we did with the acrylic, about 1 centimeter off and then push up. And then before I go into detail, I'm going to push with that over the thumb right there that you see on the top. I'm going to lift that to expose, again, the most superficial to go ahead and paint that. And then you'll go in with the brush to reassure that it's nice and round. And also with the liner brush, you're also going to make sure you got each sidewall from left to right. So this part makes a huge difference. This is what's going to make your clients be obsessed with you, because after a week, you're still growing out product in a sense because your skin moves up and down. So you're still going to be growing out product, and they can last at least 3 weeks to 4 weeks without coming back. And we use this gel, which is technically for rhinestones, which is incredible for rhinestones. But I like to do it to do 3D art. And we made these super cute little ladybugs. I already did the French. So everything's... oh, and this is also on top of the top coat. So once I finished coloring in all of the little design of the ladybugs, then I went ahead and with the second layer of top coat. So this is the final results. I hope you had a great time learning. I hope you learned something new. Please hit the like and subscribe, and I will see you guys at my next video.